for all effective purposes, in the 90s, syphilis had pretty much been eliminated. We thought about it kind of like smallpox and passenger pigeons. Fast forward to 2024, it's back.
That syphilis is still a deadly disease.
Syphilis, 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 syphilis.
Hi, I'm Dr. Brian. In this video, I'm gonna dive into why is syphilis so relevant today. First of all, syphilis is on the rise. There are some subgroups where syphilis is 1000% higher than it has been just a few years ago. And syphilis is easily caught and easily passed on, and it's easily missed, so you may never know that you have it or that you're spreading it to other people. If syphilis is undetected, it can have catastrophic damage even years later. Or in newborns, it can be catastrophic immediately when they're born and then throughout their life. Syphilis is a sexually transmitted disease, and you can get syphilis by direct contact with what's known as a syphilitic sore during vaginal, anal, or oral sex. And syphilis can spread from a mother with syphilis, unfortunately, to her unborn child. Now, what you can't do is get syphilis through casual contact with inanimate objects like toilet seats, doorknobs, swimming pools, hot tubs, sharing clothing, or eating on the same utensils. But what is really interesting is that if you look at the organism that causes syphilis, it's a bacteria. But it's not just any bacteria, and it's markedly different than, for example, the round clusters of grape-shaped bacteria that cause what we know as staph infection, or the paired little round bacteria that characteristically cause common pneumonia. The bacteria that causes syphilis has a characteristic corkscrew shape. It's known as a spirochete, and its scientific name is Treponema pallidum. And honestly, if you look at it, it looks like it would cause a disease. And when you look at that corkscrew shape, the visual of that entering your private parts, it seems like something you'd want to avoid. Now, according to the Centers for Disease Control, or the CDC, syphilis cases have risen to their highest levels since the 1950s. Now, keep in mind, the reason they were so high back in the 50s is because all the young men had just come back from overseas, either World War II or Korea, doing what young men do during wars. And now the number of cases in the United States continue to rise. In fact, 80% rise between 2018 and 2022. This includes all age groups, but especially newborns, where in 2022 there were almost 3,800 babies born in the United States with syphilis. That's almost 1,000% increase in the last 10 years. And in fact, it's so bad that the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services has established a special federal task force to address the issue of syphilis. As I mentioned, syphilis is easily caught and it's easily spread. But to understand this, I want to go through the 4 stages of syphilis. And those stages consist of the following: primary syphilis, secondary syphilis, latent syphilis, and tertiary syphilis. Now, each of these stages has specifically different symptoms, but stage 1, primary syphilis, and stage 2, secondary syphilis in particular, are really contagious. Let's start with stage 1, primary syphilis. This usually lasts between 2 and 12 months, and it's characterized by what's known as a chancre. This is a small, hard, and painless sore that develops, and it can develop anywhere, but most commonly in the genitalia, penis, the vulva, or the mouth. The key is that it's oftentimes small, oftentimes painless, and it may be in an area that is really not noticed. When it goes away, and it will go away in weeks to months, that doesn't mean the syphilis has gone away. And in particular, the whole time that you have this sore and afterwards, you were very contagious. If you have any sort of sexual interaction with other individuals, you can infect them with syphilis. And if you're untreated at this first stage, then you will advance to the second stage of syphilis. Stage 2, secondary syphilis. Following the disappearance of the chancre, that small painless sore, you will move into secondary syphilis. This is characterized by a rough, bumpy, non-itchy rash. It can be over your entire body, but it is characteristically seen on the palms of your hands and the bottoms or the soles of your feet. And in fact, recently in the social media, there was a lot of press given to Donald Trump, who had a picture where he held up his hand and he had what looked like sores on his hand. That's secondary syphilis. Now, whether he truly had syphilis is unknown. Secondary syphilis can go on for many years, and it can be associated with very non-specific symptoms. This can include fever, fatigue, being tired all the time, muscle aches, headache, and even hair loss. But in a significant number of people, the symptoms or the rash can be very intermittent, or it may not be present at all. However, even if none of the symptoms or rash are present during this stage of syphilis, secondary syphilis, the syphilis bacteria is still present and you are very contagious. If there is still no treatment, then comes stage 3. This is known as the latent phase. Latent means there are usually no outward signs whatsoever. And this is a stage where the syphilis bacteria, that little corkscrew organism, can really start to damage the heart, the bones, the nerves, and other organs. And although you're rarely contagious at this stage, it can last for years, and if it's not treated, can really cause significant damage. Finally is the 4th stage of syphilis. This is known as the tertiary or late stage. Many people don't progress to this stage, and it's thought that about 20% of those that reach the latent stage go on to tertiary syphilis. This is by far the most destructive stage of syphilis. For example, neurosyphilis is where the bacteria affect the brain. This can cause significant thinking abnormalities, cognitive deficits, and even dementia. And it can cause problems with your heart, with peripheral nerves, making movement difficult. It can cause seizures and even blindness. Here's an example. Here's 2 brain MRIs. On the right is a normal brain MRI. On the left is someone with neurosyphilis. Now, you don't have to be a physician to see these bright white abnormal areas. This is where the infection has destroyed tissue, and you can imagine the amount of neurologic devastation this produces. So why is knowing all this important? Well, as I mentioned, first of all, syphilis is really on the rise. But second, syphilis is very treatable. Simply taking the antibiotic penicillin can be curable. Syphilis is so much different than HIV and AIDS and herpes, which are viruses, and once you get them, they have to be controlled, but they can never be cured. Syphilis can be cured. Syphilis, if it's identified and treated early, can be entirely cured. So if you have symptoms of syphilis, or you think you might have them, or you have a sexual partner who told you they have syphilis or some other sexually transmitted infection, or if you've had recent unprotected sex with a new partner, or you're planning on becoming pregnant or are pregnant and have any risky behavior, consider getting tested. In fact, there are even FDA-approved at-home specimen collection kits where you can collect your own specimen and mail it into a lab for testing. That's syphilis. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.